Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Park. Today, we're going to be finishing up part 3 of our series on Tanzania. In part 1, we climbed Kilimanjaro and learned how to prepare mentally and physically, how to set big, audacious goals and actually complete them. So whether or not you're even interested in Kilimanjaro, it's a great episode and a great interview. In the second part, we summit Kilimanjaro, and then we find crisis on the way down as our guest Cindy injures herself and has the worst moment of her life that ends up changing her life for the better. Very exciting interview. Love for you to see that as well. And in this final part 3 today, we're going to do some on-the-ground safari. We're going to go into the bush and see some of the incredible animals. But unlike the safari that I took a few years ago, on this safari that we're going to be doing with Wildland Trekking today, you also get the real cultural exchange. You're going to actually go into the bush and meet some of the different tribes. Our guest Seth has lived in Tanzania, and because of the friendships and bonds that he formed while he lived there, he's able to offer an extraordinary tour unlike anything I've ever heard of. So I'm real excited for you to hear about that. So without further ado, I'll start with the interview, and on the back side of the interview, I'll be telling you some of the stories about my own experiences in Tanzania. So let's get started.
Pambe, pambe, mulane, pambe, pambe, mulane, pambe, pambe, mulane.
We have here with us Seth, who I found from another podcast, and his story was so interesting, and his experience and what they offer on their safaris is so different than what I had that I wanted to get him on the program to tell us a little bit about a different way to do the Tanzania safari experience. So Seth, could you please just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your program?
Yep. My name is Seth Quigg. I am the International Program Director and co-owner of Wildland Trekking. We currently run trips all over the United States and all over the world. And today we'll be talking a little bit about our trips in Tanzania. We run a lot of trips on Mount Kilimanjaro. And then our guests have the option to add on a cultural and wildlife safari, which is very unique and authentic to us specifically.
Yeah, that was one reason why I wanted to reach out to you, because you do such a different kind of experience. I mean, I got to meet some Maasai folks and all that, but you really get to meet them. Tell us a little bit about, in fact, why don't we go almost like day to day of what the experience is that you're offering?
Sure. Well, so I spent a lot of time in Tanzania. I studied there when I was 20 years old, been maybe 5 or 6 times for extended periods of time. And I've got to know a lot of people and friends and kind of have a Tanzanian family. And so I call him my Maasai brother. He is half Maasai, which is a big tribe found in Tanzania. And he's also half Chaga. And so on our first day of our safari, we actually go to his boma. Boma is basically a circular compound with a bunch of huts inside where the Maasai people live. And so we go to his boma and we get to meet the chief, and we camp out there. We have these luxury tents and just have an amazing setup inside of the boma, and then we're camping with the Maasai people and the chief. So it's a really authentic and unique experience. You know, a lot of other companies will have just kind of, there's like touristy bomas that you'll go visit, but we actually get to go and hang out with his tribe and his family and friends, which really makes it more authentic. Yeah, it's really cool. And so we will have like a barbecue there. We have a chef who's one of his friends and family. And so we have a big barbecue. Sometimes we've killed a goat there. It's a big part of the Maasai lifestyle and culture is goat meat. And so we will, depending on if the guests are keen to it, we'll butcher a goat and eat goat. And then the Maasai guys will do a little dance and performance, and we basically just hang out the rest of the night. They'll stay up and they'll hang out by the fire, and yeah, it's really cool. And so that's kind of the first day of the safari. And then the second day, we drive to a town called Karatu, and we have showers there, and then go out to visit another tribe called the Hadzabe. And the Hadzabe are the last Khoisan tribe in East Africa, meaning they're speaking Click language, and they're hunter-gatherers. And so we go and visit them for a whole afternoon. We actually get to go hunting with them, or sometimes they will invite you to go hunting, and we ask them to do that. And these guys are like the best hunters in the world. They shoot bows and arrows, and you can practice if you want to, but we're not really doing the hunting. We're just kind of following behind them and watching them hunt, which is a really interesting experience. These guys can shoot, the quarter out of a tree half a mile away. They're brilliant marksmen.
Cool. How about the communication? Do you have a translator, or do they speak some English, or how does that work?
They don't speak any English. We learn a little bit of their language, and we have another friend who can translate and teach us a little bit of their language. And so our friend Momoya, he basically knows the Hadzabe folks and their lifestyle and knows where to find them. They're semi-nomadic, so they're always, traveling around, but he knows where to find them. He knows them. And so he kind of will take us there. And then kind of explain what's going on, why they're doing what they're doing, and, kind of facilitate the cross-cultural interaction.
I remember when we visited Maasai village, they had one of the young men, when they do their hair red, why don't you explain a little bit of that? But he took us out and showed us all the plants and how they use them for the different medicines and all that. Tell us a little bit about the tribes that you interact with.
Well, there's a lot of different tribes all over sub-Saharan Africa, but the main tribes that we visit or encounter are the Chaga, the Maasai, the Hadzabe, which I was just talking about, and then the Datoga as well. And so the Datoga live adjacent to the Hadzabe, and they'll sometimes trade like metal for meat or certain things that they need with the Hadzabe. And so those are the main tribes of people that we're encountering.
Like I mentioned, the young man that toured Mickey and I around the bush and pointed out which plants they used for medicine, which they broke off and used as a toothbrush, etc. He had his hair dyed a bright, bright red, and I believe that was to indicate that he was entering adulthood and he had certain things that he had to do in order to become a man. Did I get that right?
Well, so within the Maasai is a massive tribe. And so you find subtle differences, between central Tanzania all the way to central Kenya. They have a big range. They live all over Eastern Africa. And so you find subtle differences from subsect to subsect. But yeah, there are different stages in men and women's lives. I think one of the main stages is right before a boy gets circumcised. Well, they get circumcised and then they have to go out into the bush for 7 days after that. And they're called spolios. And so they're sent out there and they hunt birds and kind of just hang out until their 7 days is over, and then they come back.
And we should note that these young men are probably 16, 17 years old at this point. So that circumcision hurts.
Right. And I must say, this is my interpretation of what is going on. So, there are a lot of different nuances of the culture that I might not be getting right. You know what I'm saying? Just for critics that are out there, this is my interpretation of the situation.
The young man that took us into the bush spoke excellent English. And the way I interpreted what he was telling us is this transition into adulthood was a really big deal and something they were really proud of.
Yeah, that's a big rite of passage for the young boys, as they're called Maranis, and then that's them becoming a man. But then there's also later stages of that where you become a junior warrior, then you become a senior warrior, and then a junior elder, and then a senior elder. So there's lots of different stages.
And do all the different tribes wear the red robes, or is that just the Maasai?
That is just the Maasai. Those are called shukas. And so, yeah, the Maasai are traditionally known for being tall, athletic, and wearing those shukas.
And I remember the cow was super important to them. As I recall, they eat the meat, drink the milk and the blood, and of course use the hides and other parts for building materials.
Yeah, absolutely. No part of the cow is wasted, or the goat, for that matter.
As I understood it, the cow was not sacred, but rather revered because of its importance to their culture.
Yeah, it's essentially the currency of the Maasai. They're pastoralists, and so your wealth is determined by how many cows you have.
I like how you equate the cows to their currency. So you visit the villages, and then you're also doing some game drives as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what people would see?
Yeah, totally. So then after the Hadzabe, we go back to the hotel, sleep there, and then the next morning wake up and drive to the Serengeti National Park, and we have an all-day game drive there. And then we sleep in this a great lodge called Kati Kati Tinted Lodge. You have hot showers out there that's brought in. It's, I mean, absolutely amazing. You can hear lions. I mean, you're out in the national park. You can hear lions and all types of wildlife. There are guards, so you're not in danger by any means.
I'm glad to hear you say that about the guards. That's the one thing I should have asked my tour company before I went on this camping safari, where we camped every single night. And I assumed we'd have armed guards, but it turns out, nope, we were on our own. And they would pack us pretty tightly and all that. But I have some stories I'll share at the end of the program about one night in particular that was a little bit dicey. So anyway, it's good that you had the guards there, because there are lots of animals out there that are carnivores. So what's next?
And then the next morning, we wake up early before breakfast and go on an early morning game drive. Wildlife is much more active at night and in the morning. So we have an all morning game drive. The last time I was there, we actually saw 4 cheetahs kill a gazelle. You rarely see one cheetah. And so to see 4 cheetahs, was a mom and 3 cubs, to take down an animal was super lucky. It was amazing.
I have one story to share on that. And I remember we were doing a game drive, and there was a warthog in the middle of the road just screaming bloody murder. And there's tall grass on both sides. We could tell it was upset about something, just screaming. And so we were, stopped trying to figure out what it was so upset about. And then finally we saw, I can't remember if it was a cheetah or a leopard with its baby, and taken away the baby. And then the warthog, once it finally realized, when the mother realized that it was all lost, took one last look, turned around, and trotted back into the grass as if nothing ever happened. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to see out there. That's a part of the brilliance of safaris, driving safaris, and cultural safaris. I mean, you never know what you're going to see.
Let's talk a minute, Seth, about who the safari is actually a suitable trip for. I went to Tanzania with my girlfriend, Mickey, who, it turns out, for reasons I'll get into after our interview, why she actually did not come on the safari with me. But for her, it actually was an unsuitable trip. It turns out Mickey gets car sick, and she has to go to the bathroom at every 30 minutes, which may not always be safe when you're on safari.
Right. I mean, yeah, you are in the car all day and you're bouncing around, but we can accommodate almost anybody. Like we at Wildland Trekking, we run a lot of trips that people perceive as very challenging, but we cater those trips to fit almost anybody. Granted, there are extreme differences between, safari and climbing Kilimanjaro, but for the safari aspect, like, almost anybody can go. Granted, you need to expect that at nights, yes, you will be comfortable. We're going to have great accommodations and hot water. And then, I mean, if you got to go to the bathroom all the time, that's part of life. We can pull over on the side of the road and go to the bathroom. Just gotta, I always say, like, nothing's a big deal unless we make it a big deal. So it's usually about how the person feels about that.
Because Mickey didn't come on the actual safari. In my Jeep, it was just myself, a French couple, our driver, who was also the guide, and our cook, who was also the person who set up and tore down our tents. And we were told if we had to go to the bathroom on an unscheduled bathroom break, that our spot was right behind the Jeep, because that was the safest spot for us. And we did have scheduled bathroom breaks throughout the game drive. And while nobody in our group had to make an unscheduled stop, if somebody did, the guide's eyes are so well trained that they can spot danger and find an appropriate place to pull over for you to go to the bathroom. In fact, I remember there was the rare black rhino that most of the times you don't get to see, and the guides literally spotted from, it had to be more than a half a mile away. We didn't believe him until we got the binoculars out and saw that he was right. So we did see it, although it was really teeny, but that's how sharply tuned his eyes were.
Right. Yeah, the guides know. They know everything, and so they'll let you know what's acceptable and what's not. So my Maasai brother is a safari guide, and he'll tell you, rest assured, he's not going to put you in a position where you're going to get attacked by a lion.
And it sounds like your accommodations are a lot more luxurious and particularly well guarded than mine were. At night, we actually had to pee in a bottle. We couldn't leave our tents.
Oh yeah, that we don't do that. So, but it's different. So we have camping with the Maasai, we have a portable toilet. It's kind of like a luxury porta potty, and then the next 3 nights we're in really nice hotels.
Obviously, your tour is a much nicer trip than the one I took.
It's pretty nice. But the first night, again, you're camping with the Maasai to get the authentic feeling. But we have the luxury tents, and it's really nice. You're not peeing in a bottle by any means.
Inventing a 1-liter water bottle toilet was part of my adventure. So now you picked up an interesting nickname out there. Why don't you tell us the story behind that?
Yep. So I am known as the Pimby, or Pimby Master, if you will. And so Pimby is a small mammal that it's called a hyrax, a rock hyrax or tree hyrax. And basically looks like a groundhog. So when I was a student in East Africa, when was that? 16 years ago, all of us as the students gave each other nicknames. And I became Pimby because I resemble the Pimby. So my Maasai brother, we call him Nyani, which is baboon. And then like the tall guy of the trip, we called him Twiga, who was like the giraffe. So we all have these nicknames that are just kind of a joke. And so I think it was our last day hiking. We go and we meet Mamoya, our friend that knows the Hadzabe. And so Mamoya introduces us and takes us hunting with the Hadzabe. Again, we're not really hunting. We're following behind the Hadzabe. And so we're running through the savannah and it starts raining. And so we pull under this big overhanging rock, and the Hadzabe starts singing this good fortune hunting song, which sounds like this. Dinge, dinge, mulane, dinge, dinge, mulane, dupe, dinge, mulane, and they keep singing and dancing. We're like, okay, we're dancing. And then because I have an outgoing personality, they're like, I think, or Yanni's like, Pimby, you sing, get up and sing. So I started getting up around the fire and I'm doing my take of the song, which is Pimby, Pimby, Mulane, Pimby dancing, and start doing this dance. And all of a sudden, the Pimby animal, Hyrax, runs out from under the rock. They shoot it and cut its foot off and make a necklace for me and give me all of these jewels and a monkey tail to wear on my head. And they thought that I had summoned the Pimby and that I was a magic man. And so Nyani or Yao said that was the first time he's ever seen a Mzungu break the cultural boundary between the Hadzabe and Mzungu or white person. So now people most of my friends over there know me as Pimby, and it is always a funny story, and it's a good way to make people laugh, whoever you are. Like the local Tanzanians love that, and the Maasai, I think it's hilarious, and they're like, "Yeah, you do look like a Pimby." So it's a good laugh and a good way to break that cultural boundary.
Very cool. And it's amazing that you've been able to do that because it is such a distinct culture. It's so different, and I could see that it would be hard to break into, but you've managed to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never been one that's like hesitant or shy when meeting new people. I'm very willing to jump in and like do what they're doing, start cleaning the elk and like helping them out and like learning from them and learning from the differences of different people around the world. I think is super important, and to empathize that all humans, although we are different and have different lifestyles, like we're all similar too. We share similar feelings and we cry and laugh and get angry, and we're similar as much as we are different. I love to help our guests learn that about other people around the world and other cultures. Like I think it's important moving forward in this day and age to be able to empathize properly.
And they're lovely people too. I love the people of Tanzania. Very friendly and very welcoming. It was just hard to sometimes wrap your head around a culture that was so different if you didn't have the exposure like you're able to offer people.
Right. And a lot of times people like our guests will be like, wow, like all of them are staring at us, and like, well, imagine if you're sitting in your backyard and you see 6 Maasai people walk down the street, you'd probably stare at them too and be like, that's unusual,
my Maasai village, the eldest woman was named Coco, and she didn't know how old she was, but they figured somewhere in her 90s. And she was fascinated with my hair because I have very blonde hair, and she just could not stop staring at my hair. And I know she wanted to touch it. I should have just given her some.
That's a very common thing. I mean, again, thinking about what their experience is, and we're very different looking from the people there. Well, I guess white people are. I shouldn't say we. You have blonde hair and blue eyes, and you're very different looking than the Maasai people. And so it's natural curiosity of something different, right?
Yeah, and even from that tea, and I remember, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and I'm a little germ phobic, and I saw the pot she was going to make the tea, and it looked like it had dirt in it. I was like, all right, I'm going to eat dirt tea. That's okay. And it was spices, and it was so good. I've now incorporate that in my daily tea. So all the cloves and the cinnamon, all the things that she was putting in that tea was just fabulous. So it was not dirt. It was delicious.
Right. That's right. Nothing's a big deal unless you make it a big deal.
Any other stories you want to share about things that people might see or some favorite memories?
Yeah. I mean, I think this safari, our African cultural and wildlife safari, is for everybody. Like don't feel like because you have some kind of limitation, you can't come. Like anybody can come. Like we'll cater to you, So it's if you want to have your mind blown and really get to experience authentic East Africa and the people and the wildlife, like this is the safari for you. And it's unique. Like not many other companies do that,
I couldn't find another tour company, and believe me, I looked. What you offer is truly unique.
Yeah, most of them just go to Serengeti and Ngorongoro. We actually go to Ngorongoro too, which is on a big crater. On the last day, we drew a game drive through there, which is brilliant. It's like the Serengeti, like lions, cheetahs, the big five, elephant, lots of animals.
And in the Ngorongoro crater, the wildlife is so concentrated, you can't help but seeing gobs of wildlife.
Right. So we're actually thinking of doing another hike. So there's Ngorongoro crater, and to the north of that, there are two other craters, a multi crater and Imbakai crater. And we are thinking about running a cultural trek there where you're hiking with Maasai. You go into Imbakai crater, you have like 2 or 3 Maasai warriors with you, and then camp in Imbakai crater, and then come out and maybe camp in between Omoti, and then go into Omoti, camp there, and then wind up around Ngorongoro.
That would be so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. Me and Yao, my Maasai brother, we did that a while back, and we have some pretty adventurous stories from that hike.
I'll bet. Now, Seth, this safari episode is kind of like a little bonus add-on to our Kilimanjaro trekking series, 2-part series, and you go to Kilimanjaro as well, and I like that you do it at a nice pace. Any advice that you can give folks?
Absolutely. I would say just make sure that you hike, that you're a hiker beforehand. I know there are a lot of folks on there that think they're wanting to go climb Kilimanjaro and they haven't been on a hike in like 6 months. You need to be an avid hiker. You need to be in pretty good shape. The summit of Kilimanjaro is at 19,300 feet. So it's really high. So you need to have good respiratory and circulatory fitness. That's the main limitation. It's not technically challenging by any means. It's just really high. And a couple of the days at the end are very challenging, longer days. But yeah, our trip is really good because we have 3 nights of acclimatization at Marangu, which is the south gate of the park. And we do some cultural activities on the south side. And then we drive around to the north side and hike up the Rongai route. And so that first day is really easy. You hike up to Simba Camp. And then the next day, we hike over to Kikalewa Cave, which is a relatively easy day as well. It's long, but it's flattish. And then we go up to Mawinzi Tarn, where we have a layover day. And this day really makes it for our guests. And so we have a layover day there, and we go climb up 1,000 feet. And by climb, I mean hike up 1,000 feet and come back down, sleep again there. And then we head over to the main summit, which is called Kibo. I mean, I would say the best giving advice is drink a lot of water and eat a lot of food. That's, when I see people come down from having altitude sickness, it's because of those 2 things. And then going slow and having that acclimatization. And so our itinerary sets people up for success because it goes pretty slow,
Right. I appreciate that too, because I think, and I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that a lot of people try to rush it because the daily park fees are so expensive. But what good is that if you can't summit and you've worked this hard and spent a lot of money just to get over there? So I like the way that you all do it. And that's why I reached out to you so I could share your company with my listeners.
Right. It's a great itinerary. It really does work for folks. We have a high success rate of people summiting.
Perfect. And if somebody's unable to, do you have it set up that somebody's able to be with them back behind, or how does that work when some of the party can and then some can't?
Yes, we have multiple guides that are on the mountain, and they're constantly assessing the guests, and that assessment begins on day one, really. You're like, okay, how does this person take care of themselves, really? Self-care is the biggest thing, really, So the guides are making assessments on the guests, and then we have multiple guides. We have radios and walkie-talkies so we can communicate everywhere. It's very common that somebody goes up and then wants to come back down, because you're getting up to summit at 12 and midnight, so you're walking through the night, basically.
Wow. Which
is beautiful. You get to see all of the stars and the lights down on the Samburu Plain in Kenya. And it's just really peaceful to be up there. You're walking and you're switching back a lot, doing a lot of switchback. So a lot of it becomes kind of deja vu staring at Kenya, but it's a great hike. It really is a wonderful hike. And you got a lot of support, a lot of guides. Yeah. So that's kind of how we do that. And then if you're not feeling good, then one of the guides may walk you back down to camp, and then we'll have a base camp manager and a chef, and we have waiters and a big crew there. And so they'll check in with you, serve you tea, cook you food, things like that. And then the guides might return back up to the mountain. They can go up there pretty fast.
So you got it worked out regardless of what happens. So that's good.
Absolutely. Yep. And then with the park fee, like the national park has its own rescue service as well, if there is any big incident. But there's so many people and a lot of support and resources there. So it's good.
Excellent. Now let's switch gears here. I want to talk about your photography. It's outstanding. Tell us a little bit about that. Are you self-taught, or did you go to school, or just tell us a little bit about your photography?
Well, no, I studied, well, let's see. When I was in high school, I was the yearbook photographer. Just kind of like picked it up and started really enjoying it. And I found out I was good at it. And I think at that time in my life, it was good to have something I was good at. And then when I went to undergrad, I started studying photography. I have a minor in technical photography. And then it's been pretty much a hobby since then. I've gotten to travel the world over and over and over, and I love taking photographs of landscapes, of people, of culture. And yeah, I've gotten to be in some really unique positions in the world, and that offers good photos, and yeah, I had a show. We just moved back to North Carolina from Colorado. I had a show in Colorado and had some photographs up in friends' coffee shops and things like that. But it's mainly a hobby at this point.
I love your portraits. And that's one thing when I'm traveling, I want to take the pictures of the people, but I don't know if I should. So how do you handle that? I don't want to make people feel like they're a tourist attraction. And then I remember one time I was on a boat ride through some of the canalways of Bangkok. And I remember a lady coming up near me and putting her finger, waving it in front of her face, saying, no, that she did not want her picture taken. So how do you deal with that?
Right. Well, I think it has to do a lot with personality. Again, my personality, I'm very outgoing. I'm very friendly with people. I've always asked people for permission to take photographs. And so building rapport with people before you take a photograph is absolutely apparent. You have to have a relationship before you just take a photograph. And so it depends. I would urge folks that want to take photographs of people to go and talk to the person and, have some small talk before you stick a camera in their face, That's the most important thing. And not everybody wants to have their photograph taken.
Exactly. And I get where that woman was coming from.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of the portraits I have are like friends that I've met along the way that I've been sitting down with and have built a little micro relationship with, and I remember unique stories from each of those portraits. So it's almost like photography for me is kind of like a journal, keeping a journal of memories. I don't write much, but I have a lot of photographs.
Very cool. If people want to follow you on Instagram, how would they reach you?
Yeah, my Instagram name is Seth Quigg Photography, also on Facebook.
Okay. I'll make sure I put the links in the show notes on that as well and on the website. And if people want to learn more about your treks and all that kind of thing, where would they find you there?
So our company is called Wildland Trekking, www.wildlandtrekking.com. Our Facebook and Instagram is also Wildland Trekking. So we run trips all over the world, all over the United States. We run backpacking camping trips. We also have lodge-based and inn-based trips for people that want to be more comfortable. So we cater to a wide variety of people.
Very cool. One last question I meant to ask you about the safari. How do you have a minimum group size, or how does that work? Is it all custom, or do you tell us how that works?
Yeah, we have a minimum of 2 people. So if you are solo, grab a friend and come on our safari. And then if you are a Wildland Trekking past guest, you get 10% off of that. So we usually have groups about 6 or more, but our minimum is 2.
Perfect. Okay, great. Anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think it's important for folks to just get out there and be active and be healthy and explore the world and explore yourself in this world and get to know different environments and explore different cultures as well. It's the only thing that's going to save the planet is understanding.
So true. It's been great hearing about Seth and Wildland Trekking, about doing a safari in Tanzania, particularly in conjunction if you're going on a Kilimanjaro hike like we did in our 2-part series on the previous 2 episodes. I did promise to tell you some of my own stories about my African safari. And so I did mention about meeting Coco and changing my whole tea ritual. So in addition to the Coco and the tea memory and the warthog memory, I have a couple other stories I'd like to share. One night we were camping in the Ngorongoro crater, and I noticed that they made the tents particularly tight together. And I found out the reason why later that night. Right after dinner, several bull elephants, these are the big, massive ones with the massive trunks, came up. They had realized that the camp was a reliable source of water. So each night, when they finished their food hunting for the day, whatnot, they would come up to the camp and help themselves out of the big water tanks, which was kind of exciting because we were able to get pretty close. And while still wild, of course, they were used to humans being up close to them. So we were able to, maybe 30 feet away, get some really cute shots of them dunking their trunks down into the water tank. So at night, they told us that it was not safe to leave our tents, as I told you about the peeing in the water bottle kind of a thing. And I remember they did have latrines for us. Right before I headed to the tent for the last day, as now just getting dark, you could see eyes watching us from just outside the our tenting area, our camping area. And so I'm not sure what was out there, but you could see glowing eyes as I went to the restroom one last time. So I get back to my tent. I go to sleep fairly quickly. It had been a long day. And all of a sudden, maybe, 10, 11 o'clock at night, the elephants start trumpeting. 2 of the male bulls got in a fight. And I was like, oh my God, I guess I should just stay here. I was worried that they would trample us or something. But eventually they settled down. And I said, okay, fine. So I go back to sleep. And then a little bit later in the night, I hear this noise. And I was like, it sounds like somebody's walking on really thin ice and crackling the ice. But it was like 90 degrees, so that's impossible, of course. And what it turned out to be was water buffalo were grabbing the grass and ripping it out. And as they ripped it out, it made that sound. And the reason they packed our tent so closely was to keep the animals from getting near us. But of course, we had to have aisles in order to get out of our tents. And so these water buffaloes had wandered and were just working their way down our pathways, just eating the grass all night long. Another story is we were camping, I think it was in the Serengeti Park. The couple that I was camping with at breakfast, the woman was all miffed. She said, somebody is so rude. They pooped outside my tent last night. And Alicio, our chef, when he was tearing down the tent, starts laughing. He said, that wasn't human poop. That was hyena poop. He had also warned us never to leave our shoes outside the tent because the hyenas would come and take them away. And hyenas, just as a side note, I always hated them from Lion King and all that. They were always the bad guys. But it turns out hyenas do a couple really cool things. Number one, because they have such sharp teeth, they're actually like the garbage disposal of the plains. They are the only animals, as far as I understand, that can actually crunch the bone. So if it weren't for the hyenas, the bushland would be littered with skeletons. And number two, they're actually very kind to each other in their family packs or dens or whatever it is that they call themselves. If one of the hyenas gets injured, the others will make sure it gets fed and nurtured until it gets back to good health. So that's kind of cool. I mentioned, too, about my girlfriend, Mickey, who I adore. And she, on the way to walking to breakfast to start our safari adventure, trips and does a complete face plant and just smushes her face in and smushes her nose in to this gruesome mess. And, of course, you can't just blast it with regular water because the water's not sanitized. So with bottled water, we were having great difficulty trying to clean the wound out. And eventually she saw the doctor, got stitches and all that. And the doctor wouldn't let her go out in the bush because if it got infected, it would be too far from civilization to have it taken care of. So she ended up staying in the lodge, which is a beautiful lodge, for the entire week that I was out on safari. And we were able to communicate most nights just to check in on her, and she was doing grand. And she was the one I said it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because that safari, for Mickey at least, would have been unsuitable just because of her car sickness, and you are jumping in a Jeep all day. And also, she has to go to the bathroom a whole lot, so that was inconvenient for her, too. So she ends up making lifelong friends with all these folks that she still keeps up with today, and some of them are even going to come over and visit her. And this has been years now, and they still keep up on a regular basis. So it worked out great for both of us. That is also another reminder, too, that when you travel, it's a good idea to get travel insurance because had Mickey been more seriously injured, her travel insurance would have flown her to better hospital facilities, even getting her out of the country if need be. And the insurance, while it was a little bit of a fight, she did get reimbursed for the safari part of her adventure, and safaris are expensive, frankly. So that ended up being a good thing and a good reminder that it's a good idea to get travel insurance. I always make sure I get it, too, because I have elderly mother and at one time my elderly father. If something happened to them or another immediate loved one, I can be brought back without additional expense. So anyhow, a couple notes on that. And also, I just want few notes just on safaris in general. The Jeeps that you are in have pop-ups, so you can stand up in the Jeep to get some great views and photographs and all that, and that keeps you pretty safe from all the animals because you're going to see a lot of animals. And when I say a lot, I'm to where you get saying, oh, another lion, oh, another elephant, oh, is that another giraffe? That's how many animals that you see, particularly when you're in the Ngorongoro crater where they're kind of isolated in this crater. The only ones that you won't see there is giraffes. For some reason, they weren't able to get down into the crater, but you're going to see birds galore, hyenas, elephants, lions, warthogs, water buffalo. I saw during my time there, I was there late January. I got to see the starting of the migration of the wildebeest, which is amazing. In one of the alkaline lakes, Lake Natron, I think it was called, thousands of flamingos. Very cool. My favorite animal was the Thompson gazelle. It's just this delicate, beautiful, bouncy little gazelle. I just loved looking at those. I never got tired of seeing those. You'll also see some massive termite hills that are taller than humans. They're all over the place. And it's just a marvelous experience. The food is outstanding. I was shocked because I was expecting to eat yucky food, and every single meal, they said, went above and beyond. We always had a delicious soup and just a wide variety of all sorts of genres, from spaghetti to steaks. It was just great food. The people were marvelous. I just cannot more highly recommend doing the safari. If you're going to Kilimanjaro, make sure you add this on. And like I said, I did this as a standalone trip. We went to Istanbul for a couple of days, which I may not recommend that right now, but pick another place to kind of break up your trip. It is a long flight to get there. So we got based in Europe for a few days to kind of get our bearings there. And then you arrive and just have a spectacular trip of a lifetime. I cannot wait to go back. And this time when I go back, I'm going to go back with wildland trekking because I want to do that more intimate cultural experience that Seth's company can do. I did go to a Maasai village, and that was marvelous. but it's not the same. Ours was, I would say, touristy, and it was great because we were helping that particular village make a little money, but it wasn't the same thing as spending the night there, sharing bread with them. And so I definitely want to do that. And I'm pleased to share Wildland Trekking with you. I did do a lot of research trying to find a good company. I was very happy with my company, but I'm not so sure they had enough safety precautions. Like I said, we didn't have guards, and there are animals out there that can hurt you. And I think that his company offers just a little bit more comfortable experience and a safer experience. So I'm pleased to recommend them. If you go on safari or climb Kilimanjaro and use Wildland Trekking, please be sure to let them know that you heard about them from Active Travel Adventures, either the podcast or the website, and use my links when possible. If you use my links, on some occasions, do make a small commission, so that does help support the overhead of keeping this program on. So I appreciate your support. And plus, it just lets them know that they heard about it from the ATA podcast. So I really appreciate that. If you haven't done so already, also make sure that you subscribe on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to this podcast so that you don't miss any episodes. I hope you've enjoyed this 3-part series on climbing Kilimanjaro and the wildlife safari as an add-on. I'd love to hear your feedback. Remember, you can always reach me at kit@activetraveladventures.com. Go to the website. There's a contact page. And in fact, just poke around the website. I've got some great photos. There's also more resources, videos, etc. And I try to put together the whole package so that you can get the information in the manner that you most prefer, whether it's audio or visual. So I'll see you back in 2 weeks. And until next time, this is Kit Parks and Adventure On.